just jump straight in. I love this young fella, Tom De Koning, and the way that he's going about his football at the moment. His performance on Friday backed up one from a couple of weeks ago against Essendon. He could well be the inform ruckman of the competition, even above Max Gawn and Brodie Grundy, but he was huge. And that's exactly what happened. So coming up against his younger brother, it just shows you what an extra 3 or 4 years can do, and the fact that he's honed his craft as a ruckman. But the question about, Carlton's ruck setup and Pitnet, and I love Pitnet as a player, and I think, it'll be really interesting to see what Carlton do going forward, because this kid is going to play in this position for the next 7 or 8 years, and he could well be the match of any other ruckman in the comp. I think he gives you in ruck contests and aerially around the ground what a Max Gawn gives you, and then he follows up like a Brodie Grundy. So do we see those two as the preeminent
at the moment,
sort of modern ruckman of the last 6, 7, 8 years? Well, he's a mix of both of them, and he could well be the best of both of them, which is saying a fair bit.
As good as Gawn.
Well, in the air and in hit-outs, I think so. I mean, I just reckon, I don't know, if he continues on his trajectory, we'll be talking about him seriously at the end of the year about whether he's the best ruckman of the competition and worthy of All-Australian. I don't think he hasn't been poor through the first half of the year. He's been bubbling along. If he maintains, he's in a sweet spot at the moment, but his last 2 weeks have been huge. He's pushed out Pitnet as a really good second ruckman. He said, "No, I'm ready. At 24, I'm ready to take 85% of ruck time. I'll float forward and take a mark. I'll roll back, and when people are trying to run me sort of back to defensive half, and ruckman are getting Goldstein or Blitzavs or my brother Sam are trying to get goal side of me, I'll run back and I'll put 80-metre efforts in and put a fist in when a game needs to be saved. And I'll chase down tackles and diving smothers and in and under. Like, his contested ball count in the last couple of weeks has been through the roof. I love what he's doing. I think he's a combative ruckman, and you definitely need that. And the effect on the mids around him is showing. So I think life as a Paddy Cripps, as a Sam Walsh, as a Hewitt, Chera when he comes back, it's even better when you've got a kid like this, a young man like this, who takes that next step, because I think he makes your job easy.
It's the perfect situation for the Blues to be in. You've got the number one ruck, and he's been building in his final series last year. Was excellent. And you've got an excellent backup ruckman who is under contract for 3 years after this. Don't do what Melbourne did and let Pitnet go and give him away for nothing when you've got him under contract, because there are injuries. You'll need to manage De Koning at times over the next 2 or 3 years. So keep Pitnet at your club. Don't give him away for free like Melbourne did and send him to a premiership contender like Sydney. And we've seen what Brodie Grundy has done. It is ideal. Keep both of them. Play De Koning as the number one when he's fit and ready to go. Then you've got a great backup. It's just the absolute perfect list management situation for the Blues to be in.
You're a list manager, and you get the choice of any ruckman on exposed form right now, and you have them on your list for 5 years.
No, it's him 100%.
Isn't it?
Well, Grundy's 28, 29.
It's amazing that he's and it's amazing
Jackson
that he's got
Jackson would be the other one.
Yeah.
But I think with it'd be a good discussion between De Koning and Jackson if you could pick one for the next 5 years.
And it just popped. Tim English just popped in my head, and if we're having this,
I take De Koning over English.
I know, but if we're having this conversation and I'm Luke Beveridge, I'm playing this audio to Tim English and asking him, who do you want to be? Where do you want to be in your game? Do you think you have the capacity to improve and to be better in different areas? Let's drive this. I want you to be viewed as the best ruckman in the competition in 2 years' time.
Good stuff. You want to speak about the Swans?
Yeah, Swans. I haven't had them in this segment, and I just think they're getting their flowers, there's no doubt. But the type of football they're playing, the spread of contribution in all three phases, in all three divisions in the game, and in all of their players has been huge. And Sydney are building a type of football that is going to be very hard to beat. Horse talks about different methods and different ways of winning, and that is what is going to continue to happen for Sydney, because they're going to have teams throw plenty of different things at them. because whatever has been thrown to date has not been good enough. So you can try and match the type of football that they play, which is a hard contested brand of footy, high work rate, and then a system that they can either defend or attack with really well. They're the number one offense by 89 points, which is nearly a full game of scoring. They're the number one defense by 40 points, which is, might be three quarters. It might be a full game of a really good defensive effort. So it's talent, it's system, it's work rate. There's competition for spots. If Joel Amartey's kicking 9 goals one week and then not hitting the scoreboard the next, but you're still kicking 100 points, I mean, that's what Sydney are doing.
Exactly. If Warner wants to get tagged, good luck, Rowbottom and Gordon will step up, and Warner will take his tag at Bedford, who's hardly stepped a foot inside his own defensive 50 in the whole of his career, playing as a fullback. Good luck trying to stop Chad Warner as a genuine forward because he's so good overhead. So, yeah, I thought Gary did the call, and I thought he made some excellent points about that. So Amartey's 9 the week before, but this week he's up. He's outside of forward 50. They're isolating Warner as the deepest forward. They just do it in different ways, as John has said there. If Carlton played Sydney at the MCG this week, who would win? Because I think Carlton's the team right now that can match them in those facets that you've just highlighted.
Yeah, look,
at the MCG.
Yeah, very good question. And I think Carlton are going to prove a worthy adversary. I think they've got big match-winning players that can take the game away from an opposition, and the evidence was there to see against Geelong. They unpacked Geelong extremely well. It's probably the best game I've seen Curnow play. But yeah, that matchup. Well, that's why it's great when you get to the pointy end of the season, when you get to finals, when you see the best teams come up against each other. Point 3 for me is Sam May, and a lot of people have had this. Sam May, where did I get that from? Stephen May, thank you. Sam De Koning, I think.
Probably.
This is probably the wordsmith part of it again. Thanks very much, Kano. Stephen May. So everyone's had their say. Staging has been a part of the game. I mean, did you play for any free kicks?
100%.
So did I.
It was one of my biggest regrets, which I've spoken about before.
How many how many really bad ones do you reckon you had?
In my career, 5.
Yeah, I reckon I've got 2 that I can remember. One in particular, I threw myself to the ground in the goal square in a body to body contest and got the free kick and kicked the goal from 5 metres out, and I felt terrible. So I can only imagine how Stephen May feels right now, but that doesn't escape the reality of what he chose to do. And I actually think that it sits a little bit above, it's on the worst level of staging for me because of what this rule is there to do. This rule is there to protect players. It's there to protect the head. It's come in as a medico-legal reason. It's not there as just a rule or a part of the game that is there of how we want it to be played. It's actually about protection of players. I think that, and the fact that a teammate of Stephen May's actually has, in Angus Brayshaw, has left the game because of concussive effects, and that they hand out an award, the Angus Brayshaw Award, apparently at the end of every game. I heard Kyle Chandler talking about it.
Let's just have a quick listen to Kay Chandler speak about this on the Sunday Footy Show yesterday.
An award based in the spirit of Angus Brayshaw, and I think that would be courage. It would be teammanship. It would be playing the game with the right demeanour. I think whatever the opposite of that is, I think that's what Stephen May did. And I know he won't feel great about it, and in 24 hours it'll be gone. But I think that anyone who accentuates head contact in a tackle and it does it so blatantly like that, I think that should be a week. It should be elevated beyond a normal staging free kick or a normal staging fine.
I agree with you on that. So this one was different. It wasn't an exaggeration of contact, which is what we see. There was no. So this was just he's just made this up. So he's made up that he's faked that his head hit the ground and then he's grabbed his head. Where the usual staging one, there is some level of force or a nudge or a push, and then you exaggerate and accentuate that contact. This was just creating something out of thin air, which sucked the umpire into to making that call. I think Stephen May should speak today. I think the Melbourne Footy Club should put him up. I think that's really important because I reckon there was one with Windsor, which wasn't as blatant as this late in the game, where he also did something similar in a dangerous tackle. Now, if you've got a senior player doing that and then a first-year player doing the same thing, I think it's important that the Melbourne Footy Club stamp this out, and Stephen May should speak today, and he should speak on that and be ask questions about that. And I hope Melbourne put him up at some stage early on in this week. The Cats.
Yeah, I've got the Cats are in dire straits at the moment. We've had plenty of conversations about Geelong, from pre-season predictions, their early season form, which was brilliant.
There are no buts, but there are buts. I've got to say, you were spot on.
Well, I didn't see this coming either. Who saw it coming? Which is why a lot of our predictions and conversations are folly in many ways. We can see trends that are occurring, but they can be changed. And Geelong are having a downward trend. It's consistent with closer to last year than it has been with the last decade. But one particular player who's going through his challenges, and we have spoken about quite consistently, is Tom Stewart and being tagged. But his concern and his situation is not dissimilar to the rest of the team. Referring to Sam De Koning at that point and playing him in the ruck. But Tom Stewart, it just shows you how we should never take for granted the elite performers in our competition, because it's difficult when you are that good at what you do.
Yeah.
Clubs will throw different things at you. Now, I know the perception is that all of a sudden he's getting some attention. So it's not as if things haven't been tried with Tom Stewart in the past. But what clubs have now decided to do is dedicate a person to him, and add to that the fact that Geelong are allowing the ball to travel freely through their midfield, unlike they have in any of Tom Stewart's time before. So he is now having to change the way he defends, having to change the way he positions. He's handling more ball coming quickly into an even-numbered back line, which he has never really been in that position to do. So there's some things outside of his control, all whilst he's actually getting dagged and tagged by a player now. He can't take a step without being bumped and buffeted. All-Australian 5 times. We were talking about him at the beginning of the year, like he continued on his merry way, but that's all stopped, and it's not going to go anywhere in a hurry.
Not going to go anywhere for the rest of his career, you would suspect.
I want to talk about where Port Adelaide are at, and I do want to talk about Ken Hinkley's role and the way that we perceive coaches and deal with coaches and the downturn in performance by teams. 3 weeks ago, or 5 weeks ago, Chris Fagan lost to GWS. 6 weeks ago, they lost to GWS, and we didn't like his press conference, and he sounded like he wasn't sure about where it was going. He was supporting his players. There didn't seem to be a really strong line on where he was going. He was open-minded and speaking openly in a press conference. A couple of weeks after that, they lost to Hawthorn, and David King suggested that Chris Fagan had run his race and that maybe they should get ruthless and look for Chris Scott. I wonder, how has that aged? In 3 weeks, now Brisbane are humming. Chris Fagan, seems to be doing as good a job as any, because what we get caught up in moments. We get caught up in what we think are trends, but the competition is so tight and so fierce that you can be off a couple of percent and come up against a better team and you'll get smacked. Brisbane have clearly turned their form around. Geelong have gone the other way. Port Adelaide have bumped through this year, but they've still got a winning record, which not many clubs have. But they're in the mix of about 6 or 7 teams that are going to be vying for spots in the 8. I think there's one game between 5th and 13th at the moment. Hawthorn are going to leave themselves thereabouts. Why don't we just pump the brakes a little bit? Now, I know Kenny just got booed, which is a talking point, and we've spoken about it. Port Adelaide's form is not great, and they have a lot of players that look like they're out of form, similar to what Brisbane looked like 5 weeks ago. Why don't we pump the brakes and just have a look at what it looks like in a month, in 6 weeks? Then we'll have a little bit more of an idea of where Port Adelaide are at in season 2024. then we'll have a little bit more of an idea on what Ken Hinckley and the people and the leadership of the Port Adelaide Football Club might be considering about going forward. Yes, he has been there for 12 years. Yes, he has been there for a long time and done a pretty good job. No, he hasn't been to a grand final. No, he doesn't have a premiership under his belt. But is he still a good coach? He's been a good coach. Can he be a coach that takes the next step? The next 4, 5, 6 weeks might give us that evidence that we don't have already. Because we're talking about a Port Adelaide side that's trying to resculpt and regenerate.
When do you know? Like you've been through it and you knew it was time. What was it that made you realise that you knew it was time to walk away?
I think.
And is it nearing that point? Because
it may be, but only.
So what for you? What was it? What was there something you saw in your players? Was it the around the group in the dressing room conversations you've had?
I think it was more about where I was at.
Yeah.
I was angry. I was jaded. I wasn't coaching clear-minded. And when you talk, well, how do you not coach clear-minded? Well, you probably don't rock up to the club as present as you need to be to lead, to manage and inspire your staff and your players. I've got no idea where Ken Hinckley is at in that regard.
This is sort of what I said yesterday. I think he will have a great lens of that. And I think it'll get to a point, if it gets to that point, where he has that conversation with the club and the decision will take care of itself. Now, if things continue along this path where they're performing like that, there are some warning signs there that I'm seeing. But once again, I think he will know and the club will have those discussions ongoing where it gets to a point, okay, after 12 years, I'm not now getting the best out of the group that I've got. And even we had Chris Davies on SEN Breakfast on Friday. He said essentially they're underperforming with the list that they've got, and they don't know if this list is good enough to get where they need to go. But right now, they're certain that they are capable of more than what they are delivering,
and they're still searching for that.
Yeah.
I thought that it was a brilliant interview, and I thought he was excellent. Not trying to deflect, not trying to sweep stuff under the carpet, saying they're all on the hook. And Port Adelaide I was actually over there on Friday, at a lunch that they had run, that Port Adelaide were running, and I knew about the 2004 acknowledgement, and it wasn't great for the players. I don't know if it was used in the lead-in, whether the players were aware that there was a cohort of the 04 flag team that were there. And they must have been because they were
running through them.
They were running through them. So and they wore the Guernsey. So it had to be part of the motivation and the reason to go out and have a crack. I think you had some of the games you had against Brisbane, in that era.
Yeah.
So I was disappointed by a lack of system. Like to see quick kicks to 70 metres out from your goal, like long kicks to position in the middle of the ground, 70 metres out from Port Adelaide's goal. There looked like a lack of system, a lack of coordination. There was no efficiency. Zach Butters running sideways, trying to make things happen. If you saw that in a rugby league game, you'd be going, well, what's going on here? You sort of end up having to play together to break the line.
All of that is the warning signs that I probably haven't seen consistently from a group that Ken Hinckley has coached, where mostly the effort has been significant and mostly I believe he's got the best out of the group that he's got, and now there are some warning signs that may be coming to an end and there may need to be a refresh and a reset. But to your point, the next, like this week against the Saints, like how about, so the next 4 weeks are going to decide that, you would think, and Port fans want blood, and they will make it known to the club that they want blood. Even when Port Adelaide were playing in finals and losing prelim finals, this supporter group wanted blood, and unfortunately, this club has listened to the supporters for a long time. I hope that they're removing that and making the decision for what is best for the footy club. But my concern is that there are some warning signs that there may need to be a refresh and a reset after he's been there for so long.
Yeah, well, potentially. And can we acknowledge that no one coach is going to coach a team forever? That's not what happens.
No.
So And does it mean that that Ken hasn't made a great contribution to the club when his time comes? No, he's made a fantastic contribution to this football club and to others.
And be careful what you wish for is the other point. Because, okay, hand the reins over to Josh Carr, which is what is going to happen. How does that look for the Port Adelaide supporters that want blood? Don't just assume that a new coach comes in and you get a Craig McRae bounce. There is no guarantee. It may be Adamuse at Richmond, and Port Adelaide may go down to the bottom of the ladder for 5 years. So just be careful what you wish for, and because this is the group largely. It's not as if you're stacked with first round draft picks coming in. So that would be my warning sign to put it. If you want a change of coach, good luck to you. But just the grass isn't often greener on the other side.
Well, and I think we saw this with Luke Beveridge when he came in. Brendan McCartney left that club and the team actually in really good shape, and Bevo came in and finished it off.
Doesn't always work that way.
No, it doesn't always. But you don't know. We don't know what's under the bonnet. We don't know how the club is operating, whether it's in good shape generally, but just not popping, whether there's just a little bit of herbs and spices that's required to bring it, to its best version. We don't know that. But the two coaches that were under the fiercest pressure earlier in the year were Luke Beveridge and Chris Fagan. And now we're just moving on. Now, Matty Nix has copped it. Ken Hinkley now, Ross Lyon for a period. It is part of the gig, and you've got to be ready for it because you will have your downturns, and eventually you get got. That's just the way it is.
That's the way it works.
But between now and then, you try and help your people as much as you can. You try and build your playing group. You try and support your staff. You try and develop trust and belief and faith in what you're doing. That's the coach's job, and it's harder to do in these circumstances, no doubt. But as he said, and as all of the coaches have said along the way, and it's not trite, we're just going to go back to work. And I've got to go and do my job because I'm not going to be sitting listening to Kane and Bucks at 7:30 on a Monday morning talking about me. I've got to go and do the job that I'm paid to do.
Tom, welcome in. Let's start with Tommy Hawkins.
Morning, Kane. Morning, Bucks. This is a really concerning one. I'm not going to pretend to have the full suite of details around his injury. It's been kept quite secret over the past 24 to 48 hours. I mean, he had scans on his foot on Saturday, and it's Monday morning, and we still don't know exactly what the prognosis is. But what I can tell you, and I said this last night on Footy Furnace as well, there are people very close to Hawkins who are extremely concerned that his season might be over. And if his season's over, well, is his career over as well? So I've spoken to Geelong. I've pushed them again. They've been seeking second and third opinions. We should know today exactly what's wrong, but it is a worry that Hawkins hurt his foot like this. If it's a Liz Frank, it would be several weeks, and that might be the end of Tom Hawkins, which would be a real shame for two reasons: A, because Geelong need him, but B, because he's sitting on 796 goals, and we would have loved for him to get to 800. So we'll wait and see what the result is today.
It would suggest that if they're going to ground, I think it's out of respect for Tom and for decisions that might need to be made. The last people that need to know or should know is actually the wider public, and that time will come, won't it, Tom? But it doesn't stop the questions being asked.
No, I agree with that, and I'm not suggesting that this is definitely the end, but the fact that they've all gone to ground, the fact that it's taken this long, it doesn't bode well. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he can get back, but it doesn't look good at this stage. What
about the MRO, Tom? Will Geelong challenge the Dangerfield suspension?
Yeah, they will. And interestingly, Paddy Dangerfield speaking this morning, a media alert's been sent out, and he's talking to the press this morning, so we'll know. We'll confirm that he's going to go to the tribunal, but also, I guess, get an understanding of what he's going to argue. A big weekend when it comes to fines as well. All up, $41,250 were fined this weekend. 9 players in a melee, 6 from North Melbourne, 3 from Melbourne. The big one there is Port's Zach Butters, who on Saturday received a 4th offence for striking. $10,000. I say he can escape. It's still a lot of money. $6,250 with an early guilty plea. That's his 4th striking offence since finals last year. And he's just one of many players to cop a financial sanction this weekend. Of course, you've spoken about Stephen May. Paul Curtis for North Melbourne with a 3rd offence for engaging in MLA. Yeah, $5,000 as well. So that money goes to concussion research, but a busy weekend for the AFL coffers.
Hey, Tommy, it's just a question without notice. If Zach Butters did what he did to Jared Berry again next weekend for a fifth offence, what would the fine become?
I think the fine doesn't go up. This is the maximum financial sanction. I think then it becomes serious misconduct, or you can be sent to the tribunal from there actually. But no, the fine doesn't go up any higher than $10,000 as a max sanction.
How does the AFL feel about what Stephen May did?
No, they're not happy with Stephen May. They're not pretending it's the biggest issue either, but they don't like this, and that's why they fined him for exaggeration. I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I do expect Laura Kane in her chat with Sarah Ollie or whoever interviews her at AFL House over the next couple of days to confirm that they don't like the look of this, and that would be a statement from Laura Kane and the AFL. So he's been fined, and I expect Melbourne to accept that and to move on. He's not the only player to do it. I heard your conversation before, but it does have a bit of a different tinge to it now, given the seriousness around concussion.
Let's turn our focus to some player movement. You've got 11 players you want to keep your eye on.
Yeah, these 11 players are contracted, and at this time of the year, the clubs, whenever you bring up contracted players, invariably say, well, they're contracted, they're not going anywhere. But I've done a bit of research, and from 2018 to 2023, almost 50% of players traded have been under contract. So don't be fooled by clubs saying, well, they've got a deal, because often it doesn't matter. And what we saw last year was even almost every single contracted player who wanted to go ended up moving clubs. So just some names to keep an eye on. Nothing more than that at this stage, but Caleb Daniel and Jack McRae. Daniel's contracted to the end of 2026, Jack McRae to the end of 2027. I'll just watch them, especially whether Jack McRae can play some midfield time at the Dogs this year. He certainly wants to play more midfield time. Rory Lobb, we know as well at the Dogs, he'll ask for a trade at the end of the year. So there could be some changes coming at the end of the season with 1, 2 or 3 of those players. I'd also keep an eye on Rowan Marshall at St Kilda. They're not the most settled environment at the moment, the Saints, and clubs have become aware more recently that Rowan Marshall is one of those players that might have a look around if the right deal presents itself. There's a few ifs and buts here, but I'm not saying that about Jack Sinclair. I'm not saying that about other players, but Rowan Marshall is just a little bit less settled than others.
They do need to get a player in to settle that attitude, I suppose, if it's prevailing.
And other clubs are absolutely aware of that at this point of the season. Charlie Cameron to the end of 2025. There's been a bit of noise around him. Luke Davies-Uniacke, there's been a lot of noise around him. He's contracted at the end of next year as well, but I wouldn't be surprised if a club came for him at the end of this year. Jack Lukosius, that continues to bubble. Just where he fits into Damien Hardwick's team is really interesting. He's contracted to the end of 2026. Clayton Oliver is contracted to the end of 2030. He's in the first year of a 7-year deal, reported $7 million over 7 years. But my understanding is he's got full TPP uplift, meaning that's in excess, 1.2, 1.3 plus per year. So he'd need to play some better footy. And I don't know whether that can get into another club, whether he wants to, but I don't think it's going to stop clubs asking the question at the end of the season. Xander Maguire's reported Shea Bolton, who's contracted at the end of 2028. And Daniel Rioli, of course, is very close to Damien Hardwick. We know that. Bobby Hill, that's been knocked on the head in the past couple of weeks. He's contracted to the end of 2026. The Pies are trying to extend him, but still want to keep an eye on if they can't extend him, because he's worth more than the money that he's on. And the last one that I've got, Kane and Bucks, is Harrison Petty, who's contracted to the end of 2025. Now, Adelaide, I doubt they're going to offer what they offered last year to get him. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Crows came after him again. And it'll be interesting to see whether Melbourne entertain anything. So just some players to keep an eye on.
Love it, Tom. Unbelievable that Melbourne said no to that offer from Adelaide last year. One of the biggest errors we've seen for a while. Hey, and just before we let you go, an update on Will Pukowski's future.
Yeah, he's yet to get back in training. Daniel Cherney for Code Sports reported on this last week. It's all true, which is he's had issues with concussion, and that's sort of been intertwined with mental health. And there's players and people that are close to him and around now that, well, I guess there's another way to put it. They'd be shocked if he played again, and that is a real shame. Again, we hope that he can find peace within himself to play and be happy, but At this stage, it's looking highly unlikely, and I think it now turns to, well, what sort of payout, what sort of financial, insurance does he have to allow him to move on to the next phase of his life? That, again, is yet to be confirmed, but that is the prevailing view now from people inside Cricket Victoria, and that is a real shame given the talent that he has and the person that he is, a hugely respected person in cricket circles.
Appreciate the update, mate. Thanks for your time.